The letter trembled in my hands, its edges worn and yellowed with age. I hadn't meant to snoop, but when I saw it peeking out from beneath Dean's stack of bills, curiosity got the better of me. Now, standing in his study, my heart raced as I unfolded the paper, revealing a secret that would change everything. "Evelyn, where are you?" Dean's voice echoed from downstairs, startling me. I quickly refolded the letter and shoved it back into its hiding place. "Coming!" I called, trying to keep my voice steady as I hurried out of the room. Dean was waiting at the bottom of the stairs, car keys in hand. "I'm heading out. Dad needs his medication in an hour." "Where are you going?" I asked, unable to keep the suspicion out of my voice. He shrugged, avoiding my gaze. "Just some errands. I'll be back later." As the front door slammed behind him, I sighed and made my way to the living room, where Arthur, my father-in-law, sat in his wheelchair by the window. "Everything all right, dear?" Arthur asked, his kind eyes crinkling with concern. I forced a smile. "Of course. How are you feeling today?" "Oh, same as always. But don't change the subject. What's troubling you?" I hesitated, then sat down on the couch across from him. "Arthur, have you ever felt like there's something you don't know about your own family?" He chuckled softly. "My dear, every family has its secrets. But what's brought this on?" Before I could answer, the doorbell rang. I excused myself and went to answer it, finding Dean's Aunt Mary on the porch. "Evelyn, I hope I'm not interrupting," she said, enveloping me in a warm hug. "Not at all. Come in," I replied, grateful for her presence. Mary had always been a rock for me, especially since I'd quit my nursing job to care for Arthur full-time. As we settled in the kitchen with cups of tea, Mary studied my face. "Something's bothering you? Is it Dean again?" I nodded, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. "I found a letter in his study," I confessed. "I didn't read it, but, Mary, I think he's hiding something from me. And it's not just that. The way he's been acting lately, the secretive phone calls, the unexplained absences." Mary reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Evelyn, you're one of the strongest women I know. You gave up your career to care for Arthur, and I've seen how much love and dedication you pour into this family, but you can't keep sacrificing yourself for people who don't appreciate it." "I don't know what to do," I whispered, feeling tears prick at my eyes. "First things first," Mary said firmly. "You need to confront Dean about that letter. Whatever it is, you deserve the truth." Just then we heard the front door open and Dean's voice called out, "I'm home." Mary and I exchanged a look. "No time like the present. Just a sec," she murmured, giving my hand one last squeeze before standing up. As Dean walked into the kitchen, his eyes widened in surprise at the sight of his aunt. "Mary, what are you doing here?" "Just visiting," she replied coolly. "But I think you and Evelyn need to talk. I'll go keep Arthur company." As Mary left the room, Dean turned to me with a questioning look. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. "Dean, we need to talk about the letter I found in your study." His face paled. "What letter?" "The one you've been hiding. I didn't read it, but I know it's important. What are you keeping from me?" Dean's expression hardened. "You had no right to go through my things. And you have no right to keep secrets that affect this family." I shot back, my voice rising. "I've given up everything to take care of your father, to support you. The least you can do is be honest with me." For a moment we stood there in tense silence. Then Dean's shoulders slumped. "You're right," he said quietly. "There's something I need to tell you, but you're not going to like it." As he began to speak, I felt my world tilting on its axis, knowing that whatever came next would change our lives forever. I stared at the pile of bills on the kitchen table, my stomach churning. How had it come to this? Dean's revelation about his gambling debts had left me reeling, but the reality of our financial situation was even worse than I'd imagined. "Evelyn?" Arthur's voice called from the living room. "Is everything all right?" I quickly shoved the bills into a drawer and plastered on a smile as I walked into the living room. "Everything's fine, Arthur. How about some lunch?" As I prepared a simple meal for us, I couldn't help but think about how different my life had become. Just 2 years ago, I was a respected nurse with a promising career ahead of me. Now I was struggling to make ends meet while caring for my father-in-law full-time. "You're awfully quiet today," Arthur observed as we ate. I sighed, unable to hide my distress any longer. "I'm sorry, Arthur, it's just... things are a bit tight right now, financially speaking. Arthur's brow furrowed with concern. Has Dean not been providing enough? It's complicated, I said, not wanting to burden him with the truth about his son's irresponsible behavior. Just then, the front door slammed, and Dean strode into the room. Hey, Dad, he said, barely glancing at me. I'm heading out again. Don't wait up. Dean, wait, I called, following him to the door. We need to talk about the bills. There's not enough to cover everything this month. He shrugged, avoiding my gaze. Figure it out. I've got things to take care of. As he walked out, leaving me once again to deal with the mess he'd created, I felt a surge of anger and frustration. How much longer could I keep this up? The phone rang, startling me out of my thoughts. It was Mary. Evelyn, dear, how are you holding up? Her warm voice came through the line. I couldn't hold back anymore. The tears I'd been fighting all day finally spilled over. Oh, Mary, I choked out. It's worse than we thought. Dean's gambling. He's put us in a terrible position. I'm coming over, Mary said firmly. We'll figure this out together. An hour later, Mary and I sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by bills and bank statements. The reality of our situation was laid bare before us. Evelyn, Mary said gently, you can't keep going on like this. Dean's behavior is putting you and Arthur at risk. I nodded, feeling a strange mix of relief and dread at having someone else acknowledge the gravity of the situation. I know, but what can I do? I can't just abandon Arthur. Mary's eyes lit up with an idea. What if we looked into assisted living for Arthur? Somewhere he'd be well cared for, and you could go back to nursing. The thought had crossed my mind before, but I'd always pushed it away, feeling guilty. I don't know, Mary. It feels like giving up. It's not giving up, she insisted. It's taking care of yourself so you can better take care of others. You're a brilliant nurse, Evelyn. The world needs you back out there. As we talked through the possibilities, I felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in months. Maybe there was a way out of this mess after all. Our conversation was interrupted by the sound of a key in the lock. Dean stumbled in, reeking of alcohol. What's going on here? He slurred, eyeing Mary suspiciously. I stood up, my resolve strengthening. We're discussing options, Dean. Things can't go on like this. His face darkened. What's that supposed to mean? Before I could respond, Arthur's voice called out from the living room, sounding distressed. Evelyn? Dean, I need help. As I rushed to Arthur's side, with Dean stumbling behind me, I knew that a critical moment had arrived. Something had to change, and soon. The weight of the decisions before me pressed down, but for the first time in a long while, I felt ready to face them head-on. The early morning light filtered through the curtains as I sat at Arthur's bedside, my eyes heavy from another sleepless night. Dean hadn't come home again, and the weight of his absence pressed down on me like a physical force. Evelyn, dear, Arthur's weak voice broke through my thoughts. You look exhausted. Why don't you get some rest? I forced a smile. I'm fine, Arthur. How are you feeling this morning? Before he could answer, the front door slammed, and Dean's unsteady footsteps echoed through the house. My heart raced as I braced myself for what was to come. Where have you been? I demanded as Dean stumbled into the room, reeking of alcohol and cheap perfume. He waved dismissively. Out. What's it to you? Arthur's face fell, his disappointment in his son palpable. Dean, son, this isn't right. Evelyn deserves better. Dean's eyes flashed with anger. Stay out of this, Dad. It's none of your business. I stepped between them, my voice low and firm. That's enough, Dean. Go sleep it off. As Dean skulked away, I turned back to Arthur, my heart breaking at the sadness in his eyes. I'm so sorry, Arthur. You shouldn't have to see this. He reached out and squeezed my hand. It's not your fault, my dear. You've been nothing but a blessing to this family. Later that afternoon, as I was preparing Arthur's medication, my phone buzzed with a text from Mary. Need to talk. Can you meet me at the cafe in an hour? Anxiety gnawed at my stomach as I made my way to the cafe. Mary was already there, her face grave as I sat down across from her. Evelyn, I've discovered something, she said without preamble. Dean's been making large withdrawals from Arthur's accounts. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. What? How is that possible? Mary slid a stack of bank statements across the table. He must have gotten power of attorney at some point. Evelyn, he's been siphoning off thousands of dollars. My hands shook as I flipped through the papers, the evidence of Dean's betrayal laid out in black and white. How could he do this to his own father? I'm so sorry, dear, Mary said, reaching out to squeeze my hand. But you need to know the truth. This can't go on. As I drove home, my mind raced with the implications of what I'd learned. How could I confront Dean? How could I protect Arthur? I walked into the house to find Dean pacing in the living room, his face flushed with anger. Where have you been? He demanded. Dad needed his medication an hour ago. Guilt and anger warred within me. I was out, and don't you dare lecture me about responsibilities when you've been stealing from your own father. Dean's face paled. What are you talking about? I pulled out the bank statements. I know everything, Dean. How could you? For a moment, he looked like he might deny it. Then his expression hardened. You don't understand. I had debts to pay. I had no choice. There's always a choice, I spat. And you chose to betray your family. Our shouting match was interrupted by a crash from Arthur's room. We both raced in to find him on the floor, his wheelchair overturned. Arthur, I cried, kneeling beside him. Are you all right? He groaned in pain. I heard shouting. I was trying to come see what was wrong. As I helped Arthur back into bed, checking him for injuries, Dean hovered uselessly in the doorway. The contrast between his neglect and Arthur's concern for us, even in his weakened state, was stark. I turned to Dean, my voice cold. This ends now. I want you out of this house by tomorrow. His eyes widened in disbelief. You can't be serious. This is my house. Not anymore, I said, my resolve strengthening with each word. I'm calling a lawyer in the morning. We're getting a divorce, Dean, and I'm going to make sure Arthur is protected from you. As Dean stormed out, slamming the door behind him, I sat on the edge of Arthur's bed, my hand in his. The road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. Change was coming, and I was ready to face it head on. The morning after my confrontation with Dean, I woke to an eerie silence in the house. My heart raced as I rushed to Arthur's room, fearing the worst. To my relief, he was sleeping peacefully. As I checked his vitals, I steeled myself for the day ahead. Today was the day I would meet with the divorce lawyer. I had just finished helping Arthur with his breakfast when the doorbell rang. My stomach dropped as I opened the door to find Dean standing there, looking haggard but determined. We need to talk, Evelyn, he said, pushing past me into the house. I crossed my arms, standing my ground. I have nothing to say to you, Dean. I'm meeting with a lawyer today. It's over. His face contorted with anger. You can't do this to me, to us. Think about Dad. I am thinking about Arthur, I shot back. I'm thinking about how you've been stealing from him, neglecting him. He deserves better, and so do I. Dean's eyes narrowed. You don't know what you're talking about. You have no idea what I've been dealing with. Then enlighten me, Dean, I challenged. What could possibly justify what you've done? He hesitated, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. With a start, I recognized it as the letter I'd found in his study weeks ago. Read it, he said, thrusting it towards me. With trembling hands, I unfolded the letter. As I read, my world tilted on its axis. It was from a woman claiming to be Dean's half-sister, the product of an affair Arthur had years ago. She was demanding money to keep quiet about the scandal. I looked up at Dean, stunned. Is this why you've been taking money from Arthur's accounts? He nodded, his shoulders sagging. I didn't know what else to do. I couldn't let this destroy Dad's reputation. But the demands kept getting bigger, and then I started gambling, thinking I could win enough to pay her off. I felt a mix of emotions, anger at Dean's deception, sympathy for the impossible situation he'd found himself in, and a deep sadness for Arthur. Why didn't you tell me? I asked softly. I was ashamed, Dean admitted. I thought I could handle it on my own, but I've made such a mess of everything. Before I could respond, we heard a crash from Arthur's room. We rushed in to find him on the floor, gasping for breath. Arthur, I cried, kneeling beside him. Dean, call an ambulance. As we waited for the paramedics, I held Arthur's hand, my mind racing. How could I leave now, knowing the truth? But how could I stay after everything that had happened? At the hospital, Mary met us in the waiting room. As Dean paced anxiously, I pulled her aside and told her everything. Oh, Evelyn, she said, her eyes filling with tears. What a terrible burden you've all been carrying. The doctor emerged, his face grave. Mr. Thompson has had a severe stroke. The next 24 hours will be critical. As Dean broke down, I felt a strange calm settle over me. In that moment, I knew what I had to do. I approached Dean, my voice steady. I'm not going to abandon Arthur now. But things have to change, Dean. No more secrets, no more lies. We need to face this together, for Arthur's sake. Dean looked up at me, his eyes red-rimmed. What are you saying? I took a deep breath. I'm saying I'll put the divorce on hold for now. But you need to come clean about everything. To me, to Arthur when he's well enough, and to this woman claiming to be your sister. We'll figure out how to handle it together. As Dean nodded, relief and gratitude washing over his face, I felt the weight of my decision settle on my shoulders. The path ahead would be difficult, but I knew in my heart it was the right choice. For better or worse, we were family, and families face their demons together. The hospital room was eerily quiet, save for the steady beep of Arthur's heart monitor. I sat by his bedside, my hand gently clasping his, willing him to wake up. It had been 3 days since his stroke, and the doctors were cautiously optimistic about his recovery. Dean burst into the room, his face flushed with excitement. "Evelyn, I've got great news. I've found a way to fix everything." I raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "What are you talking about, Dean?" He pulled up a chair, leaning in close. "I've been in touch with a guy who can get us quick cash. We can pay off my sister, cover Dad's medical bills, and start fresh. All I need is your signature on a few documents." My heart sank. "Dean, no. We agreed no more secrets, no more schemes. What kind of documents?" He hesitated, then pulled out a stack of papers. "It's just a small loan against the house. We'll pay it back in no time, I promise." I leafed through the documents, my blood running cold as I realized the implications. "This isn't a small loan, Dean. This is practically signing away our home. How could you even consider this?" "What choice do we have?" he hissed, glancing nervously at Arthur. "We're drowning in debt, and my sister is threatening to go public. This is our only way out." I stood up, my voice shaking with anger. "No, Dean, this ends now. I won't let you gamble away our future on another one of your schemes." His face darkened. "You don't understand. If you don't sign these papers, I'll lose everything. We'll lose everything." "Maybe that's what needs to happen," I said softly, the realization hitting me like a ton of bricks. Maybe we need to lose it all to find our way back. Just then Mary walked in, her eyes widening as she sensed the tension in the room. "What's going on here?" I turned to her, my decision crystallizing. "Mary, I need your help. Can Arthur stay with you for a while when he's released?" "Of course," she said, looking confused. "But why?" I took a deep breath. "Because I'm leaving, Mary. I can't do this anymore." Dean jumped up, panic in his eyes. "Evelyn, you can't be serious. What about Dad? What about us?" "There is no us anymore, Dean," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I've given everything I have to this family, but I can't keep sacrificing myself. It's time I start taking care of me." As the weight of my words sank in, Arthur's eyes fluttered open. "Evelyn," he croaked, his voice weak but clear. I rushed to his side, tears streaming down my face. "I'm here, Arthur. How are you feeling?" He squeezed my hand weakly. "I heard everything," he whispered. "You go. Be happy." A sob escaped me as I realized Arthur had been aware of our conversation. "Are you sure? I don't want to abandon you." Arthur's eyes flickered to Dean, then back to me. "Not abandoning, saving yourself. Proud of you." In that moment, looking into Arthur's eyes, I found the strength I needed. I turned to Dean, my resolve firm. "I'm going to my parents' house tonight. I'll be back tomorrow to pack my things. I want a divorce, Dean, for real this time." Dean's face crumpled, but I steeled myself against the guilt. I'd made my decision, and for once I was putting myself first. As I walked out of the hospital room, Mary followed me. "Evelyn, wait. Are you sure about this?" I nodded, feeling a strange mix of sadness and liberation. "I am, Mary. It's time for me to start a new chapter. I can't keep living in the shadows of Dean's mistakes." She pulled me into a tight hug. "I'm here for you, whatever you need." As I drove to my parents' house that night, my car packed with a few essentials, I felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in years. The road ahead would be difficult, but I was ready to face it head-on. It was time to reclaim my life, my career, and my happiness. And nothing, not even the love I still felt for Arthur, could hold me back anymore. The call came at 3 a.m., jolting me from a fitful sleep. Mary's voice trembled on the other end of the line. "Evelyn, you need to come to the hospital. It's Arthur." My heart raced as I threw on clothes and rushed out the door. The past month, living at my parents' house, had been a whirlwind of emotions and legal meetings, but Arthur had always been at the forefront of my mind. When I arrived at the hospital, Mary was waiting outside Arthur's room, her eyes red-rimmed. "The doctors say it won't be long now," she whispered. I steeled myself and entered the room. Arthur lay there, looking smaller and frailer than I'd ever seen him. Dean sat by his bedside, his head in his hands. "Evelyn," Arthur croaked, his eyes lighting up as he saw me. "You came." I rushed to his side, taking his hand in mine. "Of course I came, Arthur, I'm here." He smiled weakly. "Good, there's something I need to tell you both." Dean looked up, his face haggard. "Dad, save your strength." Arthur shook his head. "No time. Evelyn, in my desk, there's a letter, my will. You need to know." His words were cut off by a fit of coughing. A nurse rushed in, ushering us out of the room. Dean and I stood in the hallway, the tension between us palpable. "What's he talking about?" Dean demanded. "What will?" I shook my head, bewildered. "I don't know. I haven't seen any will." Hours passed in agonizing silence. Finally, the doctor emerged, his face solemn. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "He's gone." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Despite our complicated history, I felt a deep ache for the kind man who had become like a father to me. In the days that followed, I threw myself into arranging the funeral, grateful for the distraction. It wasn't until the day before the service that I remembered Arthur's words about the will. With a sense of trepidation, I went to the house Dean and I had once shared. He wasn't home, which was a relief. I made my way to Arthur's study, my heart pounding as I opened his desk drawer. There, nestled among old papers, was an envelope with my name on it. With trembling hands, I opened it and began to read. "My dear Evelyn, if you're reading this, I'm no longer with you. I want you to know how much you've meant to me these past years. You've been more than a daughter-in-law. You've been the daughter I never had. It's because of this that I've made a decision that may come as a shock. I've amended my will to leave you my stock portfolio. It's not a fortune, but it should be enough to give you a fresh start. I know things have been difficult with Dean, and I'm sorry for the part I've played in that. But you deserve happiness, Evelyn. Use this gift to build the life you've always dreamed of. With all my love, Arthur." I sat there, stunned, tears streaming down my face. The implications of Arthur's gift were staggering. With this inheritance, I could pay off the debts Dean had accrued, restart my nursing career, maybe even open the small clinic I'd always dreamed of. Just then, I heard the front door slam. "Evelyn," Dean's voice called out. "What are you doing here?" I quickly folded the letter and stood up, my mind racing. How would Dean react to this news? Would he try to contest the will? The thought of another legal battle made my stomach churn. As Dean's footsteps approached the study, I took a deep breath. This was it, the moment that would determine the course of my future. I had to be strong, had to stand my ground, for Arthur's sake and for my own. "Dean," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "We need to talk. There's something you need to know about your father's will." The tension in the room was palpable as I stood face to face with Dean, Arthur's letter clutched tightly in my hand. His eyes darted between my face and the paper, a mix of confusion and suspicion etched across his features. "What's going on, Evelyn? What's this about Dad's will?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the storm I knew was coming. "Arthur left me his stock portfolio, Dean. He wanted me to have a fresh start." The color drained from Dean's face, replaced quickly by a flush of anger. "That's impossible. You're lying." "I'm not," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "It's all here in this letter. He knew about our problems, Dean. He wanted to help me." Dean lunged forward, trying to snatch the letter from my hand. I stepped back, narrowly avoiding his grasp. "You manipulated him," he shouted. "You turned my own father against me." "No, Dean," I said firmly. "You did that all on your own." Just then the doorbell rang. We both froze, staring at each other. After a moment, I heard Mary's voice calling from outside. "Evelyn? Dean? Are you in there?" I moved towards the door, but Dean blocked my path. "Don't you dare," he hissed. "We can't hide from this, Dean," I said, pushing past him. "It's time for the truth to come out." I opened the door to find Mary standing there with a concerned look on her face. "What's going on?" she asked, taking in our tense postures. "Come in, Mary," I said, ignoring Dean's protests. "There's something you need to know." Over the next hour, I laid bare everything. Dean's gambling debts, his theft from Arthur's accounts, the mysterious half-sister demanding money. Mary listened in shocked silence, her eyes widening with each revelation. "Is this true, Dean?" she finally asked, her voice trembling. Dean's shoulders slumped in defeat. I didn't mean for it to go this far," he mumbled. Mary turned to me, her eyes filled with a mix of sorrow and admiration. "Oh, Evelyn, I had no idea you were carrying all of this. Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "I wanted to protect Arthur," I said softly. "And I guess a part of me still hoped Dean would change." Dean's head snapped up at that, his eyes blazing. "Change? You never gave me a chance, and now you're stealing my inheritance." "That's enough," Mary's voice cracked like a whip. "Dean, you've brought this on yourself. Evelyn has every right to that money after everything she's done for this family." As Dean and Mary argued, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying the weight of Dean's secrets alone. The truth was out, and with it came a sense of liberation. Suddenly, Dean turned to me, his face contorted with desperation. "Evelyn, please, we can work this out. I'll change, I promise. Just don't take everything from me." For a moment, I faltered. Despite everything, a part of me still cared for the man I had once loved. But then I remembered Arthur's words in his letter. "You deserve happiness, Evelyn." I straightened my shoulders, looking Dean in the eye. "I'm not taking everything from you, Dean. I'm taking back what's rightfully mine. My freedom, my future, and the gift Arthur wanted me to have." Dean's face crumpled, and he sank to his knees, sobs racking his body. Mary moved to comfort him, but I knew my part in this scene was over. As I walked out of the house that had once been my prison, I felt a mix of emotions: relief, sadness, and a glimmer of hope for the future. The road ahead would be challenging, but for the first time in years, I was ready to face it head-on. Little did I know, the biggest challenge was yet to come. As I reached my car, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "I know about the inheritance. We need to talk. Your husband's sister." My hand trembled as I stared at the screen. Just when I thought it was over, a new storm was brewing on the horizon. My hands trembled as I sat across from Sarah, Dean's half-sister, in a quiet cafe. Her resemblance to Arthur was uncanny, a painful reminder of the family's tangled web of secrets. "I'm not here to cause trouble," Sarah said, her voice soft but firm. "I just want what's rightfully mine." I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "I understand, Sarah, but you have to know, the money Dean was sending you, it wasn't his to give. He was stealing from Arthur, from the family." Sarah's eyes widened in shock. "I had no idea. I thought Arthur was trying to make amends through Dean." As we talked, a plan began to form in my mind. "Sarah," I said, leaning forward, "what if we could honor Arthur's memory and make things right for everyone?" An hour later, I stood before Dean, Mary, and Sarah in Arthur's old study. The tension in the room was palpable. "I've made a decision," I announced, my voice steadier than I felt. "I'm going to use part of the inheritance to set up a trust for Sarah. It's what Arthur would have wanted." Dean's face contorted with rage. "You can't do that. It's my family's money." "No, Dean," Mary interjected, her voice firm. "It's Evelyn's money now, and she's doing the right thing." As Dean stormed out, slamming the door behind him, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time in years, I was taking control of my life. The next few months were a whirlwind of change. I returned to nursing, throwing myself into work with a passion I'd forgotten I had. The remaining money from Arthur's stocks allowed me to open a small clinic in an underserved area of town. One evening, as I was locking up the clinic, I saw a familiar figure approaching. It was Dean, looking haggard and humbled. "Evelyn," he said, his voice hoarse, I need help." For a moment I felt the old urge to rush to his aid, but then I remembered everything we'd been through, everything I'd learned about myself. "I'm sorry, Dean," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "I can't be the one to save you anymore, but there are programs that can help if you're ready to change." As I watched him walk away, I felt a mix of sadness and relief. Our chapter together was truly over, but a new one was just beginning for me. Weeks later, I stood in front of a group of nursing students, sharing my experiences and the lessons I'd learned. As I spoke about resilience, self-worth, and the power of standing up for oneself, I saw the spark of understanding in their eyes. "Remember," I said, my voice strong and clear, "you are more than your circumstances. You have the power to rewrite your story, to choose happiness and fulfillment. After the lecture, Mary approached me, her eyes shining with pride. Arthur would be so proud of you, Evelyn. You've turned this difficult situation into something beautiful. I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. I couldn't have done it without your support, Mary, or without everything I learned from Arthur. As we walked out into the sunlight, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The road had been long and painful, but it had led me here, to a place of strength, purpose, and self-discovery. That evening, as I sat on my porch watching the sunset, I thought about the journey I'd been on. From a woman trapped in a cycle of manipulation and self-doubt, I'd become someone who could stand tall, make tough decisions, and help others. I pulled out Arthur's letter, reading his words one last time. Use this gift to build the life you've always dreamed of. Tears pricked my eyes as I realized that's exactly what I'd done. And this was just the beginning. As the last rays of sunlight painted the sky in brilliant hues, I felt a surge of excitement for what the future held. I had reclaimed my life, my career, and my happiness. And now, with each new day, I was writing a new chapter, one filled with hope, purpose, and the unshakable knowledge that I was exactly where I was meant to be. The end was just the beginning, and I was ready for whatever came next.
My name is Mary, and for nearly 8 decades, I've been the steadfast cornerstone of my household, dedicating my life to nurturing and maintaining its warmth and comfort as a devoted housewife. Throughout the years, my husband David and I have sought solace in the simple pleasures of life, cherishing respites away from the chaotic hustle and bustle of city living. Our son Charles embarked on his own journey of matrimony 4 years ago, exchanging vows with the charming Lisa and subsequently relocating to her hometown. This significant milestone marked a new chapter for our family, promising both joy and inevitable adjustments. Little did we anticipate the complexities that would emerge in the wake of this union. As David and I sat down to discuss our retirement plans, our tranquil reverie was interrupted by an unexpected message from Charles, his request to visit us for a week. Though seemingly innocuous, it sparked a whirlwind of apprehension within us. You see, Charles's visits had become infrequent, and the strained dynamics between our families cast a shadow over his sudden desire to reconnect. The tension, it seemed, stemmed not from the conventional trope of a meddling mother-in-law, but rather from the subtle discomfort perpetuated by Lisa herself. Her demeanor often veered towards coldness, and her words carried an underlying weight that left us uneasy. The thought of navigating these unspoken tensions during Charles and Lisa's impending visit filled me with a sense of trepidation. When the day of their arrival finally came, the air was thick with anticipation. Exchanges were kept to a minimum, and it was evident that a weighty conversation loomed on the horizon. As Charles began to speak, I braced myself for the revelation that would follow. What unfolded before us was a tale of unforeseen challenges and unexpected decisions. Charles confessed to the precarious financial situation plaguing his employment and expressed his desire to forge a new path in life. His words hung heavy with implications that hinted at deeper rifts within his own household. As I listened to Charles' account, I couldn't help but reflect on the choices that had led him to this juncture. His decision to distance himself from us post-marriage suddenly made sense, as did his longing for refuge in Lisa's hometown. Yet beneath the surface, I sensed a narrative of familial discord and emotional strain that transcended geographical boundaries. In the midst of Charles's confession, Lisa's voice chimed in, offering a perspective that shed light on the complexities of her own struggles. Her candid admission of tension within their family dynamic struck a chord within me, reminding me of the delicate balance we all strive to maintain in our relationships. David and I had envisioned our twilight years as a time of serenity and tranquility, marked by the simple pleasures of life. Our recently renovated home, A labor of love stood as a testament to our aspirations for a peaceful existence. Yet, as we confronted the realities of Charles and Lisa's plight, it became increasingly clear that our capacity to provide support, both physically and emotionally, was reaching its limits. In the end, as we grappled with the weight of Charles and Lisa's revelations, one truth remained steadfast. The bonds of family, though tested and strained, endure through the trials of life. And as we navigated the uncertain terrain of the days ahead, we did so with the understanding that love in all its complexity is the guiding force that binds us together, now and always. Taking deep breaths to steady myself, I endeavored to articulate our sentiments to Charles and Lisa. "We truly appreciate your enthusiasm for our renovated home," Lisa began. "But the truth is, we're genuinely looking forward to enjoying it ourselves." Despite our attempts to convey our reservations, they seemed adamant about their decision to move in with us, brushing aside our concerns with reassurances. "Next week is too sudden." I voiced my apprehensions, hoping to prompt a reconsideration of their plans. David echoed my sentiments, expressing similar worries about the abruptness of their decision and the need to consider Lisa's parents and our own preparations. Yet despite our reservations, the young couple remained unwavering in their assurances. "It's okay, don't worry about it," they chimed repeatedly, as if to quell our unease. A week later, they made themselves at home in our midst, only to retreat to their previous residence shortly afterward. The strain of supporting them financially, coupled with the realization that Lisa may have ulterior motives, weighed heavily on our minds. "We have our limits," David remarked, his voice tinged with concern. "We can barely manage our mortgage payments as it is. The thought of shouldering the burden of supporting both of them is simply too much, especially considering Lisa's apparent intentions." "I completely agree," I concurred, feeling a pang of disappointment at the turn of events. "We can't allow ourselves to be taken advantage of. We need to assert our boundaries and make it clear that this living arrangement is untenable." As we contemplated our future, the prospect of upheaval loomed large in our minds. Every aspect seems to require preparation and adjustment. I mused aloud, feeling a sense of unease at the thought of our peaceful existence being disrupted. The following day, I mustered the courage to call Charles, hoping to convey our reluctance to continue with their living arrangement. "Living together is just too hard for us," I explained apologetically. "Your father feels the same way. We hope you understand, and perhaps it's time for you two to find a new path forward." I had hoped that my words would resonate with him, but his response left us stunned. "Actually," he began, his tone betraying a sense of determination, "I've already made the necessary arrangements to move in tomorrow." Despite our protests, it seemed Charles and Lisa were resolute in their decision. The next day, as the sound of a moving truck echoed through our neighborhood, we watched in resignation as they stepped into our living room, seemingly oblivious to our concerns. "Hello," Lisa exclaimed cheerfully, her enthusiasm palpable despite the exhaustion of their journey. "We finally arrived, and I could really use a cup of coffee, Mary. Would you mind making one for me?" As I stood there grappling with a mixture of frustration and resignation, I couldn't help but wonder how this first interaction would shape our future together. With a genuine eagerness to accommodate, I responded enthusiastically to Lisa's request. "The kitchen is just through here," I offered, gesturing towards the back room. "I'll show you where everything is and how to use it. That way, you can whip up anything you like whenever the mood strikes." As I led Lisa towards the kitchen, her expression soared, and she clicked her tongue disapprovingly before speaking. "Why are you being so cold?" she questioned, her tone laden with accusation. "We seriously considered our future, even proposed living together." I never imagined I'd have to prepare a simple cup of coffee myself. Her sudden remark caught me off guard, and I struggled to conceal my surprise. It seemed her words belied a lack of appreciation for our hospitality, and her demeanor remained unchanged as she continued. Living in this house means we can save a lot on expenses, right? Plus, there's the possibility of inheritance in the future. I never imagined we'd be so fortunate. Lisa made no effort to contribute to household chores or laundry, instead opting to criticize me with each glance. Her casual mention of inheritance struck a discordant note, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease at her lack of tact. It appeared that Charles was aware of her attitude, yet remained silent on the matter. Meanwhile, David, having retired, spent most weekdays away from home for a new job, unaware of the dynamics unfolding in his absence. Concerned by my growing fatigue and the strain of managing household responsibilities, he approached me with genuine care. "Mary, I'm genuinely concerned about you," he expressed, his voice tinged with worry. "If things become overwhelming, let's work together to find a solution." His words always had a calming effect on me, yet Lisa's behavior continued to unsettle me. Her mention of inheritance had sparked a realization within me. Living with her would prove to be a challenge, not just due to her blunt remarks, but due to a deeper, underlying tension that I couldn't quite place. Despite Lisa's watchful gaze and subtle attempts to isolate me from Charles, I seized every opportunity to communicate directly with him. "If you need help with shopping, Charles and I can go," I suggested, hoping for a moment of privacy. "Just let us know what you need, and we'll take care of everything. And of course, we'll handle the expenses." As I watched Charles' reaction, I couldn't shake the feeling of apprehension that lingered within me. It seemed that beneath the surface of our seemingly harmonious family dynamic, tension simmered, threatening to disrupt the fragile balance we had sought to maintain. I harbored a genuine hope that through open communication with Charles, Lisa's demeanor might soften, if only slightly. It had been 8 months since we began cohabiting, and during this time, Charles appeared lacking in urgency in seeking employment, preferring to lounge around the house. "It's time to start considering finding a job," I gently suggested one day, my concern growing with each passing moment. "Relying solely on us won't be sustainable in the long run. You should think about supporting yourself." Despite my attempts at diplomacy, Charles and Lisa seemed oblivious to the strain their inertia placed on our lives. Each day of their inaction heightened my disappointment and frustration. We found ourselves dipping into our retirement savings, despite still carrying a mortgage on our newly renovated home. It appeared as though Charles remained indifferent to our predicament. As the weight of our circumstances bore down on me, I realized I could no longer endure in silence. I confided in David, who had already sensed my growing discontent. "Mary, it's time to stop enduring," he advised, his concern palpable. "I plan to have a candid conversation with Charles tomorrow." After discussing our approach, we decided to address the issue as a family the following evening. Though I braced myself for Lisa's potential objections, a sense of resolution settled within me at the thought of finally confronting our situation. As night fell and the family gathered around the table, David attempted to broach the topic, but Lisa interrupted, requesting a moment to speak. Standing before us, she declared, "Throughout our time here, we've had many feelings. We believe this wonderful house isn't suitable for the two of you. Charles agrees." Her words hung in the air, laden with an unexpected directive. It dawned on me that Lisa intended to invite her own parents to reside in our renovated home. An atmosphere of tension filled the room as I struggled to comprehend the gravity of her proposal. "Are you truly serious?" I questioned, my voice trembling with a mix of shock and confusion. But Lisa remained unfazed, her demeanor haughty as she dismissed our concerns. "We believe you should be grateful for living with us," she retorted, her tone condescending. Stunned into silence, David and I exchanged glances, grappling with the weight of Lisa's audacious request. Eventually, David composed himself enough to address Charles, his tone firm yet measured. "Charles, do you understand the implications of this decision?" he inquired, seeking clarity amidst the swirling chaos of emotions. "What do you make of all this?" David's earnest inquiry hung in the air, prompting us to await Charles' response with bated breath. Lisa's audacious demand for us to vacate our own home left us reeling, desperately seeking insight or validation in Charles's words. As Charles pondered his response, a flicker of contemplation crossed his features. Upon reflection, he began tentatively, "There might be some merit to what Lisa is suggesting. Losing my job has been regrettable, and Lisa has been holding down the fort admirably. Perhaps it's time for you, Mom and Dad, to embark on a fresh start elsewhere." His words, though unexpected, struck a chord within us, sparking a moment of silent understanding. It was a realization that had been simmering beneath the surface as we grappled with the changing dynamics of our relationship with Charles. He was our cherished only child, and while we had never intended to coddle him excessively, his union with Lisa seemed to have altered his outlook drastically. As we exchanged glances, a tacit agreement passed between us, acknowledging the need for a new chapter. Yet, amidst our contemplation, Lisa interjected with a sharp retort. "Why rely on silent communication?" she challenged, her tone laced with disdain. "If you have time for that, you should be packing your bags and leaving this house." Though her words stung with anger and confusion, I maintained a composed demeanor, offering a calm smile in response. "Understood," I replied evenly. "We won't intrude any further. Whatever unfolds from now on, please don't involve us." Even as I spoke these words, I felt a sense of liberation wash over me. It was a declaration of independence from the tumultuous circumstances that had engulfed us, a resolve to chart our own path forward. And though Lisa's face lit up with satisfaction, I couldn't shake the lingering doubts that gnawed at my heart. As the day of departure loomed, I found myself grappling with a mixture of emotions. On one hand, there was a palpable sense of relief at the prospect of escaping Lisa's oppressive presence. Yet beneath the surface, there lingered a nagging uncertainty about the future that awaited us. As David busied himself with preparations for our move, his enthusiasm for the prospect of a new beginning was palpable. "We'll turn this into an adventure," he declared optimistically, his eyes alight with excitement. As he sifted through our belongings, and though we had yet to settle on our next destination, I couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope amidst the uncertainty. It was a reminder that even in the face of adversity, there was always the potential for renewal and growth. And as we embarked on this new chapter, I resolved to face whatever challenges lay ahead with courage and determination. Trusting in David's guidance, we embarked on a journey filled with uncertainty, packing only the essentials as we bid farewell to our home. Deep down, I harbored a faint hope that Charles would intervene at the 11th hour. But his silent acquiescence, coupled with Lisa's smile, spoke volumes. The fragility of family bonds weighed heavily on my mind during our journey, yet strangely, I felt a sense of liberation and clarity. Perhaps it was the relief of escaping Lisa's dominating presence that lifted my spirits. As the landscape outside our window shifted, David revealed his surprise. "We're almost there," he announced, his tone tinged with excitement. Puzzled, I inquired about our destination, only to learn that he had secured a room in a luxury condominium meticulously tailored to our preferences. Located on the second floor to accommodate my fear of heights, the apartment boasted amenities beyond our wildest dreams. a dedicated reading space, a well-equipped gym, and a serene communal bath. It was a far cry from our previous abode, and I couldn't help but express my gratitude. I never imagined we'd live somewhere like this, I marveled, my disbelief evident. David's reply was tinged with warmth as he revealed the extent of his planning. It ensures our peace of mind in our old age, he affirmed, his smile reflecting a sense of contentment despite the challenges ahead. David's optimistic spirit buoyed our resolve as we tackled the tasks of settling into our new home. The following day, we navigated the bureaucratic maze of real estate procedures, selling our old house and settling our mortgage with our savings. With the weight of financial burdens lifted, we found ourselves feeling lighter, our hearts brimming with newfound hope. Meanwhile, Charles and Lisa embarked on their own journey, embracing their new family structure with Lisa's parents by their side. As we heard snippets of their newfound contentment, I couldn't help but envision the joy they must be experiencing in their fresh start. However, amidst the flurry of change, a call from Lisa unexpectedly pierced the tranquility, signaling a potential shift in our intertwined destinies. "Hello, Mary, it's Lisa. Have you settled into your new home yet? You're not living in a park, are you? If something were to happen to you, please don't rely on us." It would be troublesome, Lisa's voice, filled with concern or perhaps something else, echoed through the phone. Despite her attempt at casual conversation, tension hung in the air as I grappled with my emotions. "Speaking of parks, our new home overlooks a beautiful park," I responded, my tone cautious. "But Lisa, there may come a time when you have to face reality." I didn't intend for our conversation to escalate into a heated exchange, but overwhelmed by my emotions, I couldn't help but hint at the underlying tensions. "Mary, have you gone mad?" Lisa retorted, her voice tinged with annoyance. "No need to worry. Charles and I are living very happily. Goodbye." With that, she abruptly ended the call, leaving me to ponder the implications of our conversation. Lisa's obliviousness to the deeper meaning behind my words only served to exacerbate my frustration. For days afterward, the encounter replayed in my mind, each time stoking the embers of resentment towards Lisa's attitude. Despite my lingering animosity, a part of me couldn't help but anticipate the challenges they might face in the future. A few days later, as if on cue, we received a call from the real estate agent handling the sale of our old house. David and I shared a knowing glance, our excitement palpable. However, our jubilation was short-lived as an urgent call from Charles disrupted the tranquility, his voice fraught with anger and frustration. "Why didn't you tell us about this? We didn't hear anything about selling the house. Now we're suddenly receiving an eviction notice from the realtor." Charles' accusations cut through the air, revealing his inner turmoil. It was the opportunity we had been waiting for, the chance to assert our stance. Calmly, David began to address Charles' accusations, unraveling the complexities of the situation. "Charles, I understand your frustration," David began, his voice steady. "But it's not as simple as you think. Ideally, you should have contributed to paying off the mortgage on that house." As Charles's shock and disappointment became apparent, I couldn't help but notice a shift in his demeanor. The confident facade he once wore seemed to crumble, replaced by a vulnerability that hinted at a deeper conflict within him. At this moment, I whispered to David, I struggled to see him as Charles, the son we raised with love. It was a revelation that struck us deeply. The man who has agreed to purchase the house has a formidable, perhaps our true family, now comprised only the three of us, stripped of wealth and resources. As David's suggestion hinted at the possibility that all four of them were in fact in a financial crisis, our investigations uncovered a troubling truth. Since they began living together, they had succumbed to the allure of gambling, plunging into a vortex of debt. Day after day, they became ensnared by the seductive pull of gambling, the men abandoning their jobs while the women neglected their household responsibilities. "Why are you prying into our financial affairs?" Lisa's voice, laced with hostility, pierced through the phone line, directed at us. Her aggression was palpable, leaving us taken aback by her confrontational demeanor. Gathering my composure, I addressed Lisa calmly but firmly. "Your arrogance is truly astonishing," I replied. "It's time for all of you to consider your next move. The new tenants are set to move in within days, so you should start looking for alternative accommodations." Lisa's response lacked remorse or introspection. There was no hint of regret in her words, only defiance. As the gravity of the situation sank in, it became clear that any hope for reconciliation had faded. Moreover, I felt compelled to convey a warning regarding the impending tenants of our former home, appearance which might evoke fear upon first interaction. However, despite his intimidating demeanor, he has shown understanding and kindness. Understanding our urgency, Lisa reluctantly acquiesced, acknowledging the need to vacate the premises promptly. However, she pleaded for more time to secure alternative housing arrangements. "We'll leave as soon as possible," Lisa conceded, her tone tinged with resignation. "But finding a new place may take some time. Can't we be granted a little more time?" Their plea for an extension tugged at my heartstrings, but given the circumstances, concessions were impossible. The impending danger and uncertainty demanded swift action, leaving little room for leniency. As I listened to Lisa's voice over the phone, a twinge of sarcasm crept into my smile. Her anxious tone betrayed the urgency of the situation, and I couldn't resist a slightly sardonic response. "You don't have much time left," I remarked dryly, offering one last piece of advice before bidding her farewell. As I ended the call, a sense of relief flooded over me, washing away the tension that had gripped me. It was as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders, leaving me with a feeling of newfound liberation. Later, through hearsay and gossip, I learned that the four of them had swiftly and diligently tidied up their living quarters before vacating the premises. The news brought a chuckle to my lips. It seemed they too had felt the urgency of the situation. Although I received no direct communication from them, I gathered from a reliable source that they had downsized to a cramped 180-square-foot studio apartment. The thought of all four of them squeezed into such a tiny space piqued my curiosity. Perhaps amidst their financial woes, they were caught up in the relentless cycle of repaying debts, leading busy lives that left little time for leisure or comfort. It was almost poetic justice, I mused as I contemplated their plight. After all the twists and turns, it appeared that they were reaping the consequences of their actions. Meanwhile, David and I were on the cusp of embarking on a new chapter in our lives. In our cozy new condo nestled in a vibrant neighborhood, we envisioned days filled with peace and contentment. Finally, we would have the opportunity to enjoy each other's company without the distractions and dramas that had plagued us in the past. As we looked ahead to our future together, we embraced the promise of tranquil and fulfilling days ahead, just the two of us in our little haven of happiness. "I'd like to have my baby in my hometown. You're in the way, sis. So could you please leave soon?" One day when I returned from work, my sister who had gotten married and moved out years ago was in my room. She was ostentatiously rubbing her swollen belly, but I couldn't say anything. Even seeing her like that, looking around the room in shock, I stood still and she laughed at me crudely. "You're just in the way since you can't even get a boyfriend, an old maid like you. Be grateful I threw away everything that was in the room to make it easier for you to leave." My room, which was normal before I left for work in the morning, was now completely empty. The bed, table, rug, and even the curtains were gone. Literally, there was nothing left. The only thing there was my sister standing defiantly in the center of the room. Your phone and wallet are in your commuter bag, right? So you won't die destitute. And it's about time you stop leeching off our parents and start living on your own. Yeah, I didn't think about getting my things back or kicking my sister out. I just didn't want to see her face anymore and wanted to leave. That was all. When I turned my back, I could hear my sister burst out laughing, as if she couldn't hold it in any longer. You can't say anything back, even when it's come to this. Aren't you too weak, sis? Ignoring her blatant mockery, I continued down the hallway. My father was on the phone in the living room, and my mother was probably preparing dinner with the sound of my father's cheerful voice and my mother's humming behind me. I walked out the front door, taking in the night air. I readjusted my bag on my shoulder and headed towards the street where there are many hotels along the way. I suddenly realized something. I wonder who is going to pay the mortgage on this house from now on. Well, never mind. I am Julia, a 27-year-old office worker. I work as a company employee and also have a side job. While I lead a stable life as a company employee, I enjoy doing what I love through my side job, such as video editing, web writing, and blog management. A 27-year-old office worker is what people would call old enough to be conscious of marriage, but I am not so conscious of love and marriage. Part of the reason is that my sister was treated like a princess at home, making me feel alienated by my family, which has prevented me from really wanting to build a happy family of my own. I have always lived with my parents at home. The household chores are supposed to be shared with my mother, but in reality, I do most of them. My mother, after coming back from her part-time job, is too tired, and seeing her like that makes me think I should be the one to do the chores. Since becoming a working adult, I have been contributing to the household expenses, which is several times more than what my friends who live alone in Tokyo pay. I am an indoor person who likes studying and didn't go out much, even during my student days. So I didn't have much desire for material things and ended up saving most of the money I earned. Even after starting work, I didn't go out much, so I gave more for the household expenses, thinking it would help my parents. Furthermore, since last year, I've been contributing towards the mortgage payments at the request of my parents. My parents seem to think it's fine for me to contribute more to the household and mortgage payments, since I earn a steady income and am responsible. However, I feel they are not very interested in me because their attention has always been on my sister Kristen, who is a year younger than me. Kristen is outgoing and very active. She would always go out somewhere on weekends during her student days. My parents naturally thought her lifestyle required money, so even when she lived at home, they never asked her for contributions towards the mortgage or household expenses. It seems my parents have been conditioned to think that I, the older sister, am low maintenance, while my sister requires more attention. A while ago, my sister moved out to live on her own. Her workplace wasn't far from our parents' home, and when I asked her why she decided to live alone, she said, I wanted to try living by myself. I want to go out at night and be able to invite my boyfriend over. The answer I had imagined was far from reality. I thought it was about wanting to make things easier for my parents or wanting to become independent. On the other hand, I had no intention of leaving my parents' house and thought it was natural to help each other out since we are a family living together, even if it meant contributing a bit more to the living expenses. Then after a while, when I went back home, my sister was waiting for me. Welcome back, sis. I'm getting married, and I will have a dinner party so both families can meet each other. Can you come to the party? She mentioned the party would be at a long-established restaurant in LA, and said make sure you wear proper clothes, not your usual plain ones. Otherwise, I'll be the one laughed at. Even though she said that, I don't own any fancy clothes. I decided to attend in my usual suit. After all, this is the most respectful attire. I have my sister's fiancé seemed sincere and was a very nice young man. He gave a very good impression when he said, "Nice to meet you, sister-in-law. I look forward to getting along." I thought she had chosen a very good partner for herself. Perhaps with him, my sister might settle down a bit, I thought in a sisterly manner. Initially, the atmosphere was formal and tense between both families. But as alcohol was served, the formal tension gradually eased, and the conversation shifted to talking about children after marriage. Our eldest daughter, Julia, is almost 30 and still unmarried, without any plans to marry. So it looks like we'll only be able to see grandchildren from our younger daughter, Kristen. We're looking forward to it so much, my parents said. I want to have children right after getting married, maybe 3, she said, and the conversation became lively. Suddenly, I noticed my sister's husband had a forced smile, looking uncomfortable, as if the cheerful smile earlier was a lie. I felt he was also uncomfortable, just like me. I wished it would end soon. Since then, my parents started doting on my sister as an investment for their first grandchild. Whenever my sister said, "Eating this food is said to make it easier to get pregnant," they would immediately go buy it and tell Kristen to eat a lot. There might be a chance I can't get pregnant because of tight clothes, she said one day, and they went to a department store to buy a dress. If you visit this church, you'll be blessed with children, they said, and they even went on a trip together. My parents doing whatever my sister said was usual for me, so I didn't think much of it other than they're doing their usual thing. However, one day my sister made a sarcastic remark to me. Because you won't get married or make an effort to show a grandchild's face, I have to go through all this trouble. Must be nice being carefree and single. Aren't you planning to get married and move out soon? But with that plain face of yours, no man would come near you. You need a bit more sex appeal. Should I teach you how to do your makeup? She laughed. I was irritated by her words, but I knew arguing back would only lead to a hysterical fight and make things worse, so I chose to say nothing. My sister has always been confident that she is more loved by our parents than I am, and she often speaks to me in a strong tone. One day, my sister got pregnant. Even someone like her could be visited by the stork, I wondered. If she could truly become a mother, I thought of her husband. Maybe it'll be fine with him, my sister said. Since I'm pregnant, I don't want to cause trouble at work, and I want to focus on parenting and easily quit her job. However, her husband thought that parenting would be expensive, and being a full-time homemaker wasn't realistic on his salary. But my sister didn't listen to him and quit her job anyway. One day, when I returned from work, my room's door was slightly open. About 4 inches. I'm meticulous, so I never leave closets or drawers open, let alone the door. My parents wouldn't have entered to clean since I do all the cleaning myself. Nervously, I opened the door to my room and was shocked. There was nothing there. I wasn't one to have a lot of belongings, but I had kept things precious to me since childhood in storage boxes, labeled and stored in the closet. Gone were the electronic dictionary my parents bought me for my 10th birthday, the commuter pass case my grandparents gave me as a high school entrance gift, my diplomas, trophies, albums, even though they were old and worn out. They were precious to me. Everything that should have been there by morning had disappeared without a trace. Standing dazed in the empty room, I heard a familiar voice from behind. "Oh, you're back, sis. I've decided to come home for my childbirth." Looking at my sister's face as she spoke with a laugh, I immediately knew she must have moved my things. "Kristen, where did you put my stuff in the closet?" I asked in a panic, but my sister, still laughing, said, "What's the rush? It wasn't anything important, right? Just junk." Being told my precious belongings were junk, anger welled up inside me. "It might be junk to you, but it's important to me. Give it back now. It's insane to move all someone's belongings out when they're not home." It must have been the first time she saw me raise my voice. Surprised, she blurted out, "I've already thrown it away." In my 27 years of life, I've never been this angry. It's outrageous to throw away someone's belongings without permission. Put everything back right now. I demanded, but my sister unapologetically said, "It's already been taken by the garbage truck." "I can't give them back." She looked at me with disdain as she said this, then added, "What's the big deal? You're getting so angry over some junk. Are you crazy? Don't yell like that. It's bad for the baby," while ostentatiously rubbing her belly. And then she continued, "I've decided to live here even after the baby is born. It seems tough after childbirth, and Mom and Dad want to see their grandchild every day. Matt plans to stay here too, so it's too small with just my room. That's why I decided to use your room too. You understand, right? You're such a filial piety failure." I was utterly astounded by her selfish behavior. Going to a parent's home for childbirth is supposed to be a temporary return before and after the birth. But living here with her husband and child is simply cohabitation, isn't it? And then to unilaterally label someone as a failure in filial piety. My anger bubbled up. Do you even realize you're being a failure in filial piety staying at home without getting married? And as the eldest daughter, not even bringing in a son-in-law. I'll show them a grandchild's face and create a life where we can live together and see each other every day. Who do you think is doing more for our parents?" She was unilaterally declaring as if it was all my fault. But there was no way I could just sit back and listen to her. If you want to live in this house as a family, that's something the whole family should discuss. Especially since you want to use my room, you should have said something sooner if you had a set date. At that point, my sister interrupted by banging loudly on my room's door. "Shut up. See, you're always like this, making a fuss. That's why I made it so you have no choice but to leave. It's annoying." That sounded like mere lashing out. Trying to use someone's room without permission and having thrown out the current resident's belongings. Yet she spoke as if she were the victim. Kristen banged on the door over and over again. "You're in the way. Leave. Don't ever come back." I was beyond flabbergasted. "Then as you wish, I'll just leave. I don't have any belongings left. No need to pack." My immense anger had now turned into sheer astonishment. I even felt like I never wanted to see her again. I turned around and headed straight for the entrance. My parents didn't seem to notice me just returning and immediately leaving through the front door. My father was probably bragging on the phone to a relative about his pregnant daughter coming home to live with them permanently. My mother seemed to be in the kitchen, possibly making my sister's favorite dish, humming a tune. I wasn't living with my family expecting anything in return. The difference in how my sister and I were treated since childhood. I thought it was because she was good at charming our parents, and that was okay. But even after growing up and taking on most of the household responsibilities, this was how I was treated. Despite allocating most of my salary to living expenses and the house's mortgage, and yet my sister, who never contributed a penny, was welcomed with open arms. The negative aspects of my parents I had tried not to see combined with my sister's behavior morphed into contempt. Without saying I'm leaving or goodbye, I opened the front door. Until that door closed, neither my parents nor my sister said anything to me. Then a week later, at the end of the month, which was payday, I usually would transfer living expenses and the mortgage payment to my father's account. But I didn't make the deposit. Since I don't live there anymore, I don't see why I should pay the mortgage for a house I'm not living in. The housing mortgage was originally taken out by my father, so it was supposed to be planned in such a way that he could repay it comfortably from his income. The household shouldn't become unsustainable just because I stopped making deposits. However, a little while later, I got a call from my mother. Right off the bat, she said, "Julia, we've received a notice for unpaid mortgage." When I checked, there was no money in your father's account. She rattled on before I could even answer, clearly in a panic. "Julia, do you know why this happened? Don't tell me you withdrew it." In contrast to her frantic tone, I answered calmly. All I did was stop making deposits. I didn't withdraw anything. If there's an unpaid mortgage, it means the withdrawal couldn't be made, right? Did you make sure there was enough balance on the withdrawal date? You didn't make a deposit. Why? She sounded genuinely puzzled, so I became just as confused. Because it was agreed that I'd contribute to the living expenses and the mortgage since I was living at home. Once I left, I obviously wouldn't continue to pay, right? I don't live there anymore. It seemed to finally dawn on her as I heard her gasp softly. "So you don't need to pay the living expenses. You're right. But could you still contribute to the mortgage, even living on your own? You should have some leeway, right? Sorry, but I can't. My current rent alone is $5,000. I'm stretched thin as it is, covering my own living costs, let alone paying for a mortgage on a house I'll never return to. $5,000? You're just an ordinary employee. How could you afford such a place?" Hearing my mother's astonished voice, I sighed. That's the same amount I used to give home every month. Asking such a thing now, it's clear you never really cared about me. If that's the case, I can't discuss money with you any further. I'm not your personal ATM. I could hear my mother whimpering over the phone. No, she repeated, her voice thinner than I had ever heard. I felt no pity. A month had passed since I left quietly, yet there was no concern over my well-being. But the mortgage, the living expenses, my rent, only money. It painfully highlighted that their interest was not in me, but in my money. That's why I hadn't felt compelled to share that I was extensively freelancing online, making far more than my father's monthly salary. The house mortgage still has 15 years left, so I was depositing $5,000 every month, including savings. It seems my mother mistook it as my father's income, given his age and years of service. Her assumption was understandable, yet she never noticed the exact amount deposited every month. A glance at my father's payslip would have clarified the discrepancy. Ultimately, my mother didn't care about the source of the money, which is why she failed to notice when the monthly income halved, leading to a shortage and subsequent mortgage payment failures, only noticed when prompted by a notice. When the absence was finally felt, she acted in a manner so typical of her. I could only offer a faint smile. Lately, she had been indulging my sister's demands for expensive baby items, further straining their finances. But without your contributions, we can't make ends meet. Could you send some money as remittance? I've told you I can't. Why don't you ask Kristen to contribute a bit for living expenses? If that's not enough, maybe you should increase your part-time work. As I conveyed this, my mother's shriek pierced my ears. Kristen just had a baby. How can I work more and leave her alone with the baby? Are you suggesting Kristen should work too? How could you say such awful things? I clarified, that's not what I meant. If Kristen and Matt as a couple are going to live at Mom and Dad's house, then they should be contributing some amount towards the living expenses. I did the same, didn't I? And isn't Matt still working, yet you're planning to live together without contributing anything? After calmly responding to avoid provoking my mother, silence followed. Staying there just temporarily might be fine, but Kristen said she plans to live there forever, and Dad seems to think the same. So it would be better for everyone living together from now on to discuss how to handle finances and share the burden. I've already left the house, so I can't be part of that discussion. Waiting a bit for a response that never came, then I'm going to hang up now. I don't plan on contacting you guys anymore, so after I hang up, I'll block you, Dad, and Kristen's numbers. You guys can delete my contact information too. Bye. With that, I ended the call. The last thing I heard was a bewildered ha from my mother. Before another call from my mother could come in, I quickly navigated my phone to block all three of them. After completing the settings, I took several deep breaths and moved closer to the living room window. From this 25th floor apartment, I couldn't see people outside without looking down. After leaving my family home, I moved into what's known as a high-rise apartment. In fact, my side income had significantly increased, allowing me to save in the tens of thousands every month, even after transferring $5,000 to my family. Remembering my mother, who would spend whatever money she had, I felt relieved I hadn't suggested using my savings to pay off the mortgage in full. After all, my parents wanted me out. Kristen, being heavily pregnant, couldn't possibly have moved my bed and table on her own. Someone definitely helped her. While it might have been Matt, I would like to think he wouldn't partake in moving all belongings from a lived-in room. Either way, such a significant move would have been noticed by my parents. I was the only one who went out for work today, and they were home all day, yet they said nothing when I returned and ignored me even as I was leaving. Whether they were persuaded by Kristen or not, it was clear my parents had a part in wanting me out. Feeling this betrayal, I decided then to give up everything and leave the house. Had I paid off the mortgage in full, the three of them would have lived comfortably in a spacious home. I could not allow that to happen, so I chose the high-rise apartment for my new home. I remember when we used to gather around the TV as a family, dreaming about living in such a place. My decision to live in a high-rise apartment out of spite turned out to be far more comfortable than expected. My chosen furniture, a space undisturbed by anyone, and the freedom to live off my earnings brought me immense satisfaction. Making my potentially struggling mother believe I was living in a luxurious home felt exhilarating. I may have bragged a bit too much about paying $5,000 in rent, but my mother never noticed. Moreover, getting along well with my neighbors on the same and adjacent floors was a delight. Contrary to my expectations of encountering boastful conversations about income or car ownership, everyone was humble, making for a pleasant living environment. 3 months later, my peaceful life was disrupted as I left the office. Kristen approached me from behind. "Sis, there's something I need to talk to you." Her lips trembled as she spoke, her appearance rougher than a year ago, likely due to childbirth and parenting, yet her charm remained, drawing attention from my colleagues and employees from other companies as they passed by. "Sorry, but I have plans afterward." "If it's about the house, talk to Mom," I attempted to gently remove Kristen's hand. Her eyes began to well up with tears, on the verge of crying, drawing some cold stares from the people around. It would be troublesome to be seen as heartless for rejecting her harshly in public. Reluctantly, I faced Kristen and suggested heading to a cafe near the station, to which she happily agreed. "Actually, I've been having an affair. Matt found out, and now he wants a divorce." This was the statement she blurted out the moment we sat down in the cafe. It felt like something out of a drama. He had the baby's DNA tested without my knowledge. It turns out Matt isn't the father. He's furious and talking about divorce." Kristen spoke in a hushed tone, aware of the sensitivity of the topic. I didn't understand all he said, but he's refusing to give us any money, insisting on suing for compensation. "You're wealthy, right? Please do something. Perhaps this is what it means to be utterly speechless." My sister cheated, so it's natural she would be sued for compensation. And of course, no one would want to pay child support for a child that isn't theirs. I couldn't comprehend the nerve of my sister coming to me for a solution. "Why don't you ask the person you cheated with to pay the compensation to you?" I suggested. "I can't do that. It was just a fling because I found him attractive." After a few dates and finding out about the baby, I cut ties, she replied. I thought Matt would forgive me. It seemed she underestimated her own husband to a remarkable extent. Though I knew my sister was selfish, I was astonished to see she treated even her loved ones this way. Then Matt didn't forgive me at all. Instead, he said he's been hating how I acted like a princess all along, and that the pressure from our parents to have children was unbearable. Terrible, isn't it? Even being blamed like this, my sister still finds a way to play the victim. I can't pay the compensation, and Mom and Dad say they have no money. So you have to pay it. Julia, she naively assumed it was a given that I would pay, just like she thought it was okay to throw out all my belongings, labeling them junk. I was profoundly disgusted by her sense of entitlement, that someone would always bail her out. Without hiding my revulsion, I stood up to leave, and Kristen quickly turned pale, grabbing my hand with both of hers. "I understand. I'll apologize. I'm sorry for throwing out your stuff without asking." "I've apologized, so we're good now, right? Please give me the money quickly." The way she tilted her head slightly, using a sweet voice, sent shivers down my spine. I shook off her hand in disgust. "Are you stupid? Why should I pay for the consequences of your affair? It doesn't matter if we're sisters. I hate you. I despise you as a person. I wouldn't help you even if you begged." With that, I left the money for the coffee, which hadn't yet been served, on the table and headed for the exit, ignoring Kristen's dramatically loud crying, trying to attract attention and guilt me into returning. I informed the staff that I left the payment on the table and walked out. She probably thought her tears would make me reconsider. No matter how loudly she cried or called out for her sister in a tragic voice, I ignored her and walked away. When I saw her standing up and heading towards me, I hurried to a crowded area, not stopping to see what she might do next. After about an hour of dodging through convenience stores, bookstores, and the shopping mall around the station, and seeing no sign of Kristen, I finally let out a deep breath and headed home. Reaching my 25th floor apartment, I quickly unlocked the door and slid inside, locking it behind me. Then the intercom rang. My intercom rarely rings. I don't use delivery services much, and my neighbors usually call to make an appointment if they need something. In this apartment, where solicitors are scarce, the chime ringing at such a time made my heart race. The intercom rang once, then again, with the intervals between rings getting shorter. It sounded like someone was pressing the button repeatedly, making me brace myself. The intercom monitor was pitch black. Thinking it might be malfunctioning, I leaned in closer, only to realize that the darkness was actually someone's pupils, causing me to instinctively swat it away. In doing so, I accidentally pressed the answer button, and immediately the voice I had been hearing echoed through. "Just pay up, you ugly ah. It's my sister." Anger surged through me more than fear. I thought I had escaped, but she had found out where I live. Peering into the intercom like a scene from a horror movie, I remained silent as her insults escalated from demanding compensation for her divorce to now demanding $1 million for the trouble she caused me. Eventually demanding my apartment, I was at a loss for words. unsure where to even begin addressing her delusions. I silently picked up the phone and called the security desk on the first floor. Even as I was on the call, through the monitor, I saw Kristen being escorted away. I confirmed that it was indeed my sister and requested that they do not let her through, apologizing repeatedly for the inconvenience while still on the phone. In the end, Kristen never pressed my apartment's intercom again. The security personnel must have handled the situation properly. From what I heard from neighbors near my family home, the house was put up for sale. Kristen and Matt continued their dispute to the point of considering a lawsuit, each unwilling to give in. However, as Kristen was clearly in the wrong, she eventually conceded once she realized the legal fees would also be included in the compensation. Ultimately, she agreed to pay Matt the amount of compensation he desired. It seems Matt submitted DNA test results to the court, proving there was no biological relation between the child and Matt, thus relieving him of any child support obligations. Kristen apparently had no savings at all, leaving the compensation payments to our parents. But due to continuous defaults on the mortgage payments, the bank foreclosed on the house. With no way to cover the mortgage due to wasteful spending and taking on Kristen's compensation, my parents were forced to sell the house and use the proceeds to pay off the mortgage. Now the family home has been sold, and the four of them have moved to a cheaper apartment nearby. Despite my father's income being sufficient for a modest living, the sudden drop in their standard of living caused stress and tension among them all. Moreover, my father's salary would almost bottom out within a few days of being deposited because they would never forget what life was like when I was transferring money to them. Eventually, my mother continued her part-time job, and Kristen somehow managed to find employment again. Despite using childcare services, being caught between work, childcare, and household duties has taken a toll on her. Barely a year after giving birth, the only consolation is that Kristen's child is growing up healthy. However, I doubt they can raise her without worries. So I'd had a neighbor pass on some flyers about childcare support to them, meddling though it may be on my end. My consistent dedication since joining the company as a fresh graduate was recognized, and I was promoted. I am now leading a new project as a group leader. My side business is also thriving with a steady increase in income. One of my side jobs, writing a serialized article as a web writer, was so well received that it was published as a book. The knowledge I acquired and shared is not commonly found on the internet, leading to its popularity and becoming a bestseller. This success has positively impacted my other side ventures, creating a virtuous cycle of growth. Embarking on new challenges, feeling just the right amount of tiredness, and returning to my comfortable home each day brings me true happiness. Hello, my name is Mary, and I'm 42 years old. I've been married to my husband, Charles, for a decade. We initially worked together, but now we are employed at different branches of our company. Charles is known for his responsible attitude at work and is quite popular among his colleagues. He's confident and ambitious, always striving to present a strong image. In contrast, I tend to be quieter and less conspicuous, which made it all the more surprising when Charles, with his dynamic personality, took an interest in me. After 3 years of dating, he proposed to me with a lavish bouquet of roses, making me feel deeply cherished. I accepted without hesitation, eagerly anticipating our life together. However, Charles soon revealed a twist in our plans. He wanted us to live with his parents. I was hesitant about this arrangement, but he convinced me, assuring me that his parents were welcoming and excited about our joint living situation. Reluctantly, I agreed. For the past 8 years, I've resided with my in-laws in what was once solely my husband's home, an arrangement I hadn't anticipated when I imagined married life. My days begin early, often with my mother-in-law critiquing minor things, such as how I clean the front door. Despite my efforts to prepare breakfast for the whole family, her incessant complaints persist. As she departs for work, leaving me to hurriedly rectify any issues, I feel reduced to mere house help. This routine involves waking up at 6:00 a.m. to manage household chores and cooking, despite my mother-in-law being at home all day and not contributing. After a long day at my job, I return home to prepare dinner. By bedtime, I'm so exhausted that I fall asleep immediately. This relentless cycle leaves me constantly worn out and stressed, while my mother-in-law relaxes in the living room, enjoying the breakfast I made. She reminds me to maintain cleanliness so that the neighbors will hold a good opinion of us. Despite the ongoing challenges and the lack of support from my husband in these domestic conflicts, this repetitive cycle seems unending. My father-in-law tends to ignore the mistreatment I face, burying himself in his newspaper, seemingly oblivious to the tension. Ever since I moved in with my husband's family, the relentless stress has taken a severe toll on me. I've lost significant weight, and even my menstrual cycle has ceased, making it impossible for us to conceive. Despite my mother-in-law being a substantial source of this stress, I'm the one who gets blamed for our inability to have children. There was a time when I took pride in my appearance and personal care, but now I hardly recognize the woman looking back at me in the mirror. The constant criticism from my mother-in-law and my dramatically changed appearance has plunged me into a deep depression. I've grown so accustomed to yielding to her demands that I've become completely submissive, feeling numb and lacking the energy to even think about leaving. The situation grew even more painful when I received devastating news. My father had passed away unexpectedly in an accident. It had been ages since I last visited my family home, mainly because my husband and mother-in-law would express their displeasure whenever I mentioned wanting to go. Filled with regret for not spending more time with him, I knew I needed to attend his funeral. When I told my husband and mother-in-law that I needed to go to my father's funeral, they coldly responded before I could even finish, saying, "We're not going. Let your family handle it." Their heartless reaction left me trembling with anger and grief. Many people attended my father's funeral. He was self-employed and had many connections, and the air was filled with tears, showing just how beloved he was. My mother, whom I hadn't seen in a long while, was shocked by my frail appearance. "Mary, what happened?" "You look so thin," she exclaimed with worry. "Are you sick?" Seeing how worn out I looked, she burst into tears, terrified at the thought of losing another loved one. "No, Mom, I'm not sick," I reassured her, trying to calm her fears. I tried to offer comfort, taking a moment to myself in the waiting room. Her concern made me reflect on my recent years and how my interactions with my husband and mother-in-law lacked any semblance of comfort or support, even during such a critical time as my father's death. This fueled my anger further, and I decided to confide in my mother about my challenges at home. Living with my in-laws has been more challenging than I ever anticipated, particularly because of the constant bullying I endure from my mother-in-law. It's wearing me down. During a candid conversation, I shared these feelings with my mother, who looked at me with deep concern. "I'm glad you're not physically ill, but this doesn't make me feel any better." "Is this why you haven't been visiting?" she asked. I nodded, confirming her suspicion, which only seemed to deepen her worry. She handed me a piece of paper, urging, "Take a look at this, then think carefully about your next steps." It was my father's will. He had always been thorough and cautious, having prepared it just in case. As I read through the document, I stumbled upon a line that made my heart skip a beat. It mentioned an inheritance of $5 million. The shock of such a large sum momentarily lifted my spirits, sparking a flicker of hope. With this money, I could build my own house and leave my in-laws' place. I thought to myself, the idea filling me with a sudden rush of excitement and relief. Back at the in-laws' house, I continued with my usual household chores, but now with plans brewing in my mind. I found the house got messier on days when I was preoccupied with my dreams of independence. No one else seemed inclined to pick up the slack. As I went about my tasks, thoughts of the inherited $5 million were a constant distraction. Despite the tense atmosphere at home, my desire to stay with my husband, Charles, remained strong. So one evening after his parents had retired for the night, and it was just the two of us, I decided it was time for an open conversation. "There's something I need to talk about," I began, breaking the silence. Charles looked at me, an expectant expression on his face. "It's about my father. I've come into an inheritance," I disclosed. "Oh, how much?" Charles asked, a note of curiosity in his voice. "It's $5 million, I revealed. Charles' eyes widened, a mixture of surprise and excitement evident on his face. "He left you that much?" "That's incredibly generous," he commented, then paused, his tone shifting as he added, "We should discuss how we might use this money." I felt a surge of relief that Charles seemed receptive, and I was ready to broach the main issue at hand. This was the moment I had been waiting for to discuss our future and the possibility of moving out from under the oppressive shadow of my in-laws. But before I could voice my ideas about using the inheritance to build our own home, Charles interjected with a shocking suggestion. "We need to transfer that money to my mom's bank account right away," he declared. I was stunned, thinking he must be joking. "Why would we do that?" "The inheritance is mine, so it wouldn't be right to give it to your mom," I responded with a laugh, hoping he was just teasing. Charles's reaction was immediate and fierce as he slammed his hand on the table. "What are you talking about?" "A wife's money belongs to her mother-in-law," he exclaimed. His words were so outlandish that I struggled to believe he was serious. His stern expression sent a chill through me. "I'm sorry, but I don't understand," I replied, bewildered. All I wanted was to suggest that we build a house for ourselves, but Charles wouldn't let me speak further. He kept insisting that my inheritance should be claimed for his mother. That night, I was too shocked to sleep. The next morning, while I was making breakfast, Charles and my mother-in-law confronted me with angry expressions. "Mary, I heard about it. You inherited $5 million, and you said you won't give it to me. Who do you think you are?" My mother-in-law demanded, her voice filled with indignation. Already aware of the inheritance through Charles, my mother-in-law was adamant. "Stop arguing and transfer it to my parents' account now. A daughter-in-law's money is our money," she asserted. Their intent to seize the inheritance at any cost was unmistakable, and no matter how much I objected, they continued to pressure me. Eventually, I fell silent. That's when Charles produced a piece of paper. "You're getting carried away because you've come into some money. I'm the one who's been supporting you. If you don't change your attitude, it's divorce," he threatened. The paper he held was a divorce form already signed by him. As I took the divorce form from Charles, a rush of memories overwhelmed me. I realized that throughout our marriage, I had never really received any financial support from him or his family. I had been contributing equally to our living expenses, and yet all the household chores fell squarely on my shoulders, despite my tireless efforts. They had consistently treated me poorly. Now they were even trying to claim my father's money. The pressure to relinquish my father's inheritance if I stayed was immense, but being told to leave suddenly seemed like a chance for a new beginning. Holding the divorce papers, I realized I had the power to shape my future. I vowed never to surrender my father's legacy and made up my mind. After a long day at work, I returned to my parents' house. "I'm home," I called out. "Welcome back," my mother greeted me with a warm smile, despite my exhaustion. A home-cooked meal awaited me on the table. It had been ages since I had enjoyed a meal prepared by someone else. With each bite of the delicious food, tears of gratitude welled up in my eyes. "Did you tell your husband about the inheritance?" my mother inquired. "Yes, and it caused quite a stir," I replied, recounting the demands my husband and mother-in-law had made. My mother listened speechless at the shocking revelation. "The inheritance belongs to you, and you alone should decide your future," she comforted me gently as I cried. After being cared for at my parents' home for a week, I decided it was time to return to my in-laws' house armed with a renewed sense of strength. "Well, I'm heading back now." "Take care," I said confidently, no longer afraid to face the challenges there. As soon as I returned, my husband and mother-in-law confronted me with stern expressions and crossed arms. "Have you reflected on your behavior?" they demanded. "Yes, I apologize." "Please allow me to stay in this house again," I offered, my apology more strategic than sincere. My mother-in-law's face lit up with anticipation. "Well then, hand over the inheritance quickly," she demanded. "The inheritance process is taking longer than expected. I haven't received it yet. It's a complex procedure, so it might take another 7 months or so," I explained, buying myself some time. 7 months? That long? My mother-in-law's disappointment was evident. "Well, fine," she reluctantly accepted. Both my mother-in-law and husband appeared satisfied, thinking their plan was still on track. Unaware of my resolve to chart my own course, despite their demands, I didn't hand over the inheritance. However, they continued to nag me about spending a week at my parents' house. "You're neglecting your duties as a wife. The house is a mess. Clean it up quickly," they insisted. The state of disarray and unhygienic conditions at my in-laws' house after just a week was almost impressive. Previously, such chaos would have deeply upset me, but now it didn't bother me in the slightest. I simply carried out my mother-in-law's commands without letting it affect me emotionally. "It's my birthday, so I'll be leaving. Make sure to keep the house clean," my mother-in-law announced as she always went on a trip to celebrate. Naturally, I wasn't invited. "By the way, have you received the inheritance yet?" "It's supposed to come in today," my husband inquired, almost too conveniently hinting that the $5 million could be a splendid birthday present for his mom. "Don't forget to transfer it to Mom's account before we get back," my mother-in-law added. The timing of her birthday, coinciding with the supposed arrival of the inheritance, felt too perfect. As they left, I maintained a pleasant facade, bidding them a cheerful take care. Once they were out of sight, I sprang into action, ready to execute the plan I had been formulating for so long. They were in for a surprise upon their return, but by then I wouldn't have to concern myself with their reactions. "Wow, this is incredible," I exclaimed as I moved my things into my new home. Thanks to my father's inheritance, I was able to build this house. I felt an overwhelming sense of happiness and relief, finally living in a beautiful place that I could call my own, free from the oppressive atmosphere of my in-laws' house. I decided to share my new home with my mother, who lives in my hometown. The sense of relief knowing I no longer had to deal with my in-laws was profound. Settling into the plush sofa in my new living room, I felt a contentment I hadn't experienced in years. To celebrate this new chapter, my mother and I decided to indulge in a day of luxury. We even hired a chef to cook for us, making the day truly special. The next evening, my phone rang. It was my husband, and his voice was thick with frustration. "What the hell is going on?" he demanded, clearly baffled by the empty house he had returned to. "I won't be coming back there." "Goodbye," I stated firmly, hoping to end the conversation without further ado. But then my mother-in-law's angry voice burst through the phone. "What are you doing? Where are you now?" she demanded. "You asked me to clean the house, so I packed up my belongings," I replied calmly, maintaining my composure despite her agitation. "That's not a funny joke. Plus, you didn't transfer the inheritance." "How many times do I have to tell you that my daughter-in-law's money is mine?" she shouted. "I'm single, you know," I retorted, my patience wearing thin. Suddenly, my yelling mother-in-law fell silent. "Single?" she echoed, confused. "Well, I'm divorced." I was handed a divorce paper, so I submitted it. "I'm a stranger to you now." "Goodbye," I said and ended the call abruptly. I couldn't help but chuckle, imagining the stunned expression on my mother-in-law's face. The freedom from that oppressive family brought a huge sense of relief. In the days that followed, I received numerous calls from my ex-husband. Whenever I had some free time, I deliberately answered the phone and calmly ignored the insults hurled by my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law. I made sure to record all these calls. With the recordings in hand, I decided to seek advice from the police. Harassment from an ex-husband is unfortunately common, and I was determined to take every precaution to ensure my safety and peace of mind in my new life. Addressing harassment early is crucial to prevent it from escalating. Thankfully, when I approached the police with my concerns, they acted promptly and visited my ex-husband's family. For my ex-in-laws, who were deeply concerned with maintaining a pristine public image, just the sight of police at their doorstep was a significant blow. Additionally, a colleague of my ex-husband, who lived nearby, saw the police visit. Given my ex-husband's high-profile status in the company, word of this incident spread quickly. Colleagues who harbored resentment towards him didn't miss the opportunity to fuel the rumor mill, and soon enough, negative gossip began circulating about him. Eventually, the rumors reached my department. "Did you hear about the police visit?" My colleagues whispered among themselves. "I'm divorced now, so I'm not really in the loop," I responded loudly enough for others to hear. The gossip-loving employees eagerly spread the news further. It didn't take long for the rumor to make its way to my ex-husband's boss. "You've been the subject of a lot of negative rumors, haven't you?" his boss remarked during a tense meeting. My ex-husband, caught off guard, could only protest. "What are you talking about?" "I can't tolerate men who don't appreciate their wives," his boss continued. "Furthermore, with these damaging rumors circulating, it could tarnish our company's reputation. Therefore, I've decided to transfer you." The transfer order issued to my ex-husband was severe, a relocation to a branch office in the least productive region, likened by some to a deserted island. "Do you understand what this means?" his boss added. Everything my ex-husband had worked for up to that point crumbled. There was no hope of advancement in the foreseeable future. With no option to decline, he had to relocate to this remote area. As for my ex-mother-in-law, she was likely taken aback by her son's suddenly tarnished reputation and the dramatic changes that followed. Following the upheaval, my ex-mother-in-law struggled to cope with the new reality that she could no longer live with her son. This isolation led her to become withdrawn, and over time, she developed symptoms of depression. Concerns about her mental health grew as she began exhibiting behaviors typical of dementia, often causing disturbances at home. My ex-father-in-law found himself in a challenging position, now the primary caregiver for his significantly changed wife. Despite the strained relations, he often lamented, even without blood ties, a daughter-in-law is still a valuable member of the family. The difficulties faced by my former in-laws seemed almost like a form of caricature retribution for the way they had treated me. Meanwhile, my life took a happier turn. Now living with my mother, we've taken up gardening in our spacious backyard. This new hobby has brought me immense joy and satisfaction, something I might never have discovered had I remained in that oppressive household. Gardening has not only revitalized my spirit, but also improved my physical health, which had previously deteriorated under the stress of living with my in-laws. I am grateful every day that I made the decision to sever ties with them, and have since found true happiness and peace in my new life with my mother. Hello, my name is Emma Christine, a 44-year-old housewife who found herself in a challenging situation after 32 years of marriage to her husband Larry, a relationship that had remained childless and was characterized more by routine than companionship. Things had taken a stark turn. The marriage had slowly disintegrated into a state where mutual support and affection were missing. Despite Emma's initial belief in their partnership being supportive and complementary, one day, after filing for divorce, and amid the painful process of dividing their assets, Emma decided to claim the house. Despite her clear stance, Larry refused to challenge her decision and, without a word, abruptly left the hospital room where she was fighting cancer. His indifference to her pleas for him to stay or engage in a meaningful conversation highlighted the deep rift between them. Feeling abandoned in her time of need, Emma was enveloped by loneliness. However, as her illness battled on, the resentment and pain that had lingered in her heart began to fade. It seemed as if her love for Larry had evaporated, replaced by a recognition of his consistent selfishness and lack of support. Realizing that Larry deserved some form of retribution for his actions, Emma began to calmly plan her revenge. Over the years, she had endured his demands and indifference, even during her illness. Larry expected her to fulfill her duties as a housewife, prioritizing his own leisure and never offering a helping hand. This disregard became more pronounced as Emma sensed a distinct change in her health, which felt different from any illness she had previously experienced. Emma's story of a marriage devoid of joy and empathy highlights her growing awareness and determination to seek justice for herself. Despite the initial dreams of a supportive partnership, the reality had proven quite the opposite. With Larry asserting that she had no reason to complain about her role, the realization of her situation and her subsequent steps to address it mark a poignant turning point in her life. I immediately contacted my father, who accompanied me to the hospital where I was diagnosed with cancer. Luckily, it was caught early, and the doctor was optimistic, encouraging me to start treatment right away. Eager to tackle the illness head-on, I asked my father to pack only the essential items from home, while I quickly went through the hospital admission process. Unable to see Larry that day due to his work commitments, I sent him a brief message to inform him. Cancer has been detected, and I'm being hospitalized for immediate treatment. As I dealt with the anxiety of facing an uncertain future, thoughts of Larry inevitably found their way into my mind. Despite feeling that my love for him had diminished, deep down there remained a faint hope that we could confront this challenge together and perhaps restore some semblance of our former life as a couple. I imagined a scenario where, perhaps moved by my vulnerability, Larry would show concern and ask, "Are you okay?" I longed for even a few comforting words or a single visit, which would have meant so much at that moment. I also wondered how he was managing without me at home, handling the meals and daily chores. A part of me felt guilty for not being able to maintain the household routines that I had always managed so effortlessly. However, as the days in the hospital turned into weeks, Larry never came to visit. He had read my message, but there was no sign of concern. not even a simple acknowledgement of my situation. His indifference, especially at a time when I was facing such a serious illness, deeply hurt me and highlighted the stark reality of our relationship. Confronted with this painful truth, I decided to let go of any expectations from Larry. With a renewed focus, I braced myself for the tough road ahead in my fight against cancer. The treatment was intense and filled with pain and discomfort. The side effects of the medication were harsh, leading to many sleepless nights. During these challenging times, there were moments when I considered giving up and letting my weakening body succumb to the disease. Yet with each passing day, I found strength in my resolve to face this battle head-on, determined to overcome the illness despite the odds. Though laden with hardship, this journey slowly transformed my perspective, teaching me resilience and the importance of self-reliance in the face of adversity. Every time I felt overwhelmed by my illness, the encouraging words from my parents, who reassured me that I was doing well and that things would improve, gave me the strength to persevere. Then on a day when I felt particularly weak, lying in bed and staring blankly at the ceiling, the door to my room swung open unexpectedly. It wasn't a scheduled visit day for my parents, and I was curious about who it could be. As I turned my head, the visitor's identity became clear. It was Larry. I wondered if he had come out of genuine concern for my condition. As he looked at my gaunt face and hollow cheeks, a whirlwind of emotions rendered me speechless. I feared whether this sight of me would make him despise me even more. Without any show of empathy, Larry sat down on a chair next to my bed, stared at me, and laughed. "So this is how bad one can look with cancer, huh? You don't even look like a woman anymore." His words felt like a sharp drain of blood from my face. These were cruel words, completely inappropriate for anyone, let alone someone battling cancer. I wished he would stop speaking, but Larry, oblivious to my feelings, continued with even more devastating comments. "Ever since you've been hospitalized and not at home, every day has been like heaven. The house is a mess, but I don't even have to go back there. Life is so comfortable without you." His merciless words reopened old wounds, and I couldn't understand why there was not even a shred of concern in his voice. Although I wanted to rebuke him sharply, my weakened body restrained me, and all I could do was silently endure his harsh words. I stared at him with a vacant gaze, and noticing my look, he laughed mockingly. Then, as if to add insult to injury, he casually mentioned, "Oh yeah, by the way, I've already filed the divorce papers. I'll be taking the house. As for the property division, you hardly have any right to refuse." Hearing these words, my vision blurred, and the room seemed to twist around me. The emotional and physical toll of my illness, combined with Larry's heartless comments, felt overwhelming. But it was this very moment that crystallized my resolve to recover and reclaim my life from the shadows of such cruelty. Larry had filed for divorce without even discussing it with me, leaving me speechless as I grappled with the shock. He continued to speak, "I've fallen for someone else. She's 21 years younger, but I'm serious about her. You're just in the way now." The painful realization that he was having an affair flashed through my mind. But having said what he wanted, Larry began to leave. "Wait a minute," I managed to say, but Larry paid no attention. It was clear there was no love left for me in his heart. The realization was so painful, yet in that moment, I felt a strange sense of clarity. "I see," I said quietly and with a laugh. Larry left the hospital room. After he left, I faced my treatment with renewed determination. Despite the emotional pain, I focused my will and resolved to fully recover from my cancer and regain my health. Those next 3 days might sound brief, but to me, racked with sleepless nights, they felt incredibly long. I wondered whether the divorce Larry mentioned was real or just meant to unsettle me. The uncertainty was unbearable, but I continued my treatment, holding on to a trump card that I believed would unsettle Larry completely once revealed. If panicked, he would surely try to reach out. As expected, Larry began to call, thinking it inappropriate to answer in the hospital. I ignored his calls, which persistently kept coming even in silent mode. Annoyed, I finally sent him a message. I'm in a hospital room, and it's inconvenient to have my phone ringing, so please don't call. After that, the calls stopped, but then the texts started. Please let me talk to you just once. I was wrong about everything. I'll apologize properly. His words seemed more like a defense strategy than genuine remorse. It appeared that Larry, perhaps realizing the gravity of his situation and the impact of his actions, had resorted to messaging after I didn't answer his calls. All this plea seemed driven by sudden fear of the consequences rather than a true change of heart. Larry's constant calls pushed me to a decision, and when he texted, "Why did you accept the divorce so easily? Can I come over now?" I was at my limit. Facing Larry in my battle with illness seemed only to promise pain, but refusing him seemed likely only to lead to more incessant calls. Reluctantly, I replied, "Do as you like." My plan for retribution was about to begin. Larry, who had unjustly divorced me without my consent, was about to face the consequences of his actions. I had been looking forward to the moment when I could plunge him into deep despair. What the hell is this all about? Larry burst into the room, his voice loud and tinged with panic. To anyone else, his reaction might seem excessive, but under the circumstances, his agitation was understandable. I had kept a critical secret from him, and now the decisive moment had come. "I had no idea you had assets worth $15 million. Why didn't you tell me?" Larry demanded, his eyes wide as he placed my passbook on the desk, which clearly showed a balance of over $15 million. "I never mentioned it because you never asked," I responded calmly. "How could I imagine a housewife like you having so much money? If I knew, I wouldn't have divorced you," he continued, his tone shifting from surprise to regret. "That's not my problem. It's your fault for not asking and divorcing me without proper discussion," I countered, shutting down his baseless excuses. Despite his domineering behavior and the unilateral decision to end our marriage, Larry's selfishness didn't falter upon discovering my assets. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I wouldn't have divorced you if I knew," he repeated almost to himself. The truth was, I had built this fortune of over $15 million through savvy investments, a hobby I had taken up to fill my spare time. It was my parents who had suggested I try investing. Our family life had been comfortable even on Larry's salary alone, but I wanted something to engage my mind. Now the revelation of this hidden wealth was about to turn Larry's world upside down, illustrating the value he had overlooked in me for so many years. I had always wanted to contribute to our finances in some way. My father, who was knowledgeable about investments, eagerly taught me the ropes when I showed interest. Under his guidance, I started with the hope of making even a small profit, and I continued to invest steadily. I made my first investment 6 years ago, and since then I quickly improved, becoming capable of earning significant amounts through my investments. Even my father was surprised by my success, often remarking, "I never expected you to grow this much." The profits I generated over these 6 years amounted to the $15 million recorded in the passbook Larry had brought up. I was planning to tell Larry when the timing was right, but then I was diagnosed with cancer, and he divorced me without giving me a chance to explain. I never intended to keep this wealth a secret forever. Once I overcame my battle with cancer and could return to normal life, I planned to share the news of this $15 million with Larry, hoping it could enhance our life together and be used as needed. However, Larry chose to divorce me selfishly before I could reveal this financial secret. Now that we're essentially strangers, it feels peculiar to disclose this to him. Given our current circumstances, it seems more likely now that the entire $15 million belongs to me alone. As I recounted my story, Larry's face turned red, and he began to shout, "If I knew you had this much money, I wouldn't have divorced you. It's your fault for keeping it a secret. You should pay me $15 million in the property division to atone for the sin of keeping secrets from your husband." Whether he was panicking over the reality of missing out on such a vast fortune, or whether he was frustrated that he couldn't get his hands on it, Larry started making unrealistic demands. Since we were already divorced, he couldn't claim this money, yet still he seemed unable to grasp that he could not reach the $15 million that was so close, yet so far. I couldn't help but laugh, which only fueled Larry's anger. "What are you laughing at? Stop belittling me," he yelled. He had always disliked my attitude, but now he accused me of being deceitful for not disclosing my fortune earlier. "A wife's assets belong to her. You have to give me this $15 million, he insisted. "I never planned to keep this a secret forever. I was going to tell you, but you divorced me first," I replied, trying to stay calm. Yet Larry dismissed my explanations as mere excuses, becoming more enraged with every word I spoke. His shouting overwhelmed me, especially as I was still recovering from my illness. It was futile to continue the conversation. Larry was set on painting me as the villain. "Enough is enough," I finally said. "You divorced me on your own. Remember who filed the divorce papers without consulting me. I always knew your behavior was terrible, but I never thought you could be so cruel." Now my heart wasn't just burdened by the struggle against cancer, but also filled with resentment towards Larry. His loud shouting was too much for my weakened body to handle. More than that, I couldn't hold back my anger towards this selfish man who sat arrogantly beside my hospital bed, hurling accusations steeped in self-centeredness. "Do you know what I thought when I found out I had cancer?" I continued, hoping maybe this would make him reflect. "I thought that maybe this would make you worry about me, maybe be kinder and reconsider your feelings. But instead, you didn't even come to visit me in the hospital." His lack of empathy and support during such a critical time in my life revealed more about his character than anything else could. It was clear that any feelings he once had were overshadowed by his selfish desires and misguided entitlements. When Larry finally showed up, he bluntly stated that he had filed for divorce without my consent and intended to take the house. His audacity to then criticize me for having substantial assets was astounding. I had said it many times before. I never intended to keep my wealth a secret indefinitely. I had planned to find the right moment to share the news, but you ruined that opportunity with your actions. I had never blamed Larry as much as I did now. In the past, I always forgave his selfish behavior, believing that as a couple, we should support each other. I never scolded or reprimanded him, enduring everything for his sake. But the reason I could endure and keep going was that I had love for Larry. I truly loved him. But now I had no love left for him. All I felt was uncontrollable anger and disbelief towards a man who only spoke and acted selfishly. How can someone be so self-centered? What kind of upbringing results in such a lack of empathy? Surely a person who engages in an affair and divorced without consent must lack serious consideration for others. I was too stunned to speak. Realizing it was futile to harbor any hope or doubt, Larry pleaded, "My girlfriend found out you have $15 million and says she'll divorce me if I don't get it from you. You still love me, right? Don't you want to help the person you used to love?" It was clear that Larry's mistress also knew about my $15 million fortune. He must have carelessly told her. From his story, it seemed his mistress was just as obsessed with money. Birds of a feather flock together, I suppose. As much as Larry and his mistress seemed a perfect match, I couldn't care less about him now. No matter how much suffering comes his way, it has nothing to do with me anymore. Please, I'll do anything. Just give me the $15 million. Larry continued to beg. But to me, his pleas were meaningless. My feelings for him had completely evaporated, replaced by a firm resolve to separate my life from his once and for all. Seeing Larry so utterly desperate was almost comical, and I couldn't help but laugh, though a wave of disappointment and misery soon followed. It dawned on me that he had never shown such desperation for anything that truly mattered to me. As we continued our conversation, my feelings for Larry cooled further. I realized that any more interaction with him was futile. Engaging with this man, who had become so distasteful to me, could not possibly lead to any happiness. I felt foolish for once hoping that during my illness, he might show up to offer kind words. Yet he remained completely oblivious to my feelings, as he kept pleading. Please, leave now, I firmly told him. Even his desperate look as he continued to plead was just noise to me, an unpleasant disturbance. I pressed the nurse call button, explained the situation, and asked for assistance to remove Larry from the room. A security guard arrived promptly and escorted him out forcibly. Please listen to me. I need you, Larry shouted until he was out the door. But I no longer took any of his words to heart. Larry tried to visit many times afterward, but the nurses, aware of the situation, never allowed him near my room again. I learned from a friend that, unable to secure the $15 million, Larry had disappointed his mistress, and she quickly left him. Now he was alone. Meanwhile, I faced my cancer with steadfast determination and eventually celebrated my recovery and discharge from the hospital. The relief and newfound energy from overcoming such a daunting challenge were more precious than anything. Now I am enjoying a peaceful and relaxed life, thoughtfully managing the wealth I accumulated through investments, far removed from the turmoil of my past with Larry.